Hey, hello chess lovers, and welcome back to Chessway. In today's video, we've got an absolutely fascinating game between Bobby Fischer and Joshua Wagner, played in August 1963. Okay, the game begins with e4 and c5, the Sicilian defense. Then, knight to f3, pawn to d6, pawn to d4, and it's immediately captured. As in every typical Sicilian, the knight recaptures. Then, knight to f6, answered by knight to c3, and now pawn to a6, the famous Sicilian Najdorf, my friends. Okay, many of you probably know this line by heart. Bishop to g5, pinning the knight. Pawn to e6, and after queen to f3, this is the key position. Black usually has two main options here, either bishop e7 or knight bd7. The difference? Knight bd7 is more flexible, while bishop e7 is a bit passive. But Fischer wastes no time, he castles long. Totally standard stuff so far. Queen to c7, bishop to e2, bishop to e7, and rook from h1 to e1. At this point, white has completed development beautifully. You can just tell, both of these players are operating on a professional level. Then Wagner decides to go aggressive with pawn to b5. Now this position, I've analyzed it many times before. White has two strong choices here. You can play a3 to stop b4, or, like Fischer, push pawn to e5. And guys, this is where the game gets wild. If you ever plan to play this variation, make sure you truly understand the positions that come after. Alright, let's keep going. Yes, this is a double attack. But black calmly responds with bishop to b7, counterattacking the queen. And here's the key point. If white gets scared and moves the queen anywhere, black will simply capture the pawn with the knight or pawn, and suddenly black dominates. It's that simple. But of course, this is Bobby Fischer, a world champion. He knows exactly what to do. Pawn takes knight, sacrificing the queen. Watch closely. If black captures with the bishop instead, the queen jumps to e3. And suddenly, white is tearing apart the black position. So here, the bishop has to accept the queen's sacrifice. After bishop takes, still attacking the rook, the chaos begins. Let's break this down to make it clear. If black tries to save the rook by moving it to c8, it might look good, right? He's up a queen. But then comes knight to d5, attacking both the queen and the bishop. If the queen slides to c5, she'll just be chased by pawns. I'll analyze that deeper another time. But what if pawn takes knight? You could take the bishop with the rook, great move, but there's something even deadlier. Pawn takes on g7, threatening to promote with checkmate. Yes, rook to g8 is possible, but then rook takes bishop, check. King forced to d8. And what's next? Knight to e6, check. King can't move, so pawn must take the knight. Then rook to e8, double check. King has to take the rook. And finally, bishop to h5, checkmate. How beautiful is that? Absolutely stunning. That's just one of many insane variations that can appear from this line. Okay, let's go back to the actual game. Here, black captures the f6 pawn, attacking the bishop. And the bishop doesn't retreat, rook takes on e6. Unbelievable move. Fischer is in total control. Because if the rook is captured, knight recaptures, and the queen is lost. And if the queen moves, same story, bishop to h5 is checkmate. But Wagner plays bishop takes bishop instead. Then, knight to d5, attacking both the queen and bishop again. After queen to d8, rook takes bishop, check. Let's analyze this one too. It's instructive. It looks like the queen is ready to capture the rook. But after knight recaptures and king takes the knight, white can still play rook takes bishop. Then, after rook takes bishop, knight to f5 check, king to e6, and maybe just rook to d6 check. King takes knight, and rook takes back. King goes back, and rook slides to d3. At this point, white is up a pawn. Sure, black's king is active, but that g5 pawn is too far forward. And remember, in a Russian mindset, one pawn is still one pawn, especially in the endgame. All right, back to the board. Wagner probably saw all that and decided king to f8 instead. No mercy from Fischer. Knight jumps to c6, attacking the queen. Queen goes to c8, counterattacking the knight. And here comes another sacrifice. Bishop to h5. Let's look at this closely again. If queen takes the knight, rook takes the pawn, check. If king goes to g8, knight e7, checkmate. If king goes to e8, it's a windmill check pattern. Back to the game again. Now look carefully. Here, the queen is basically fighting two knights. So maybe that's why Wagner chose knight to e6. But unfortunately, it's a blunder. After Fischer captures the knight, pawn can't recapture because rook takes pawn, check. And wherever the king goes, knight f6, checkmate. Finally, Wagner realizes he blundered. He offers the queen with queen to f5, maybe hoping to trade it for a rook. But Fischer, ruthless, knight to d7, check. King to g7 could maybe survive, but instead king goes to g8, allowing Fischer to play knight to f6, check. King to g7, rook takes pawn, checkmate threat. King to h6 forced, knight to e3, attacking the queen again. We already know how dangerous that knight is. Queen goes to e6 to escape the g4 mate idea, but Fischer doesn't stop. Rook sacrifices itself on d6. Wow! He knows that capturing the rook leads to immediate mate. So queen goes to c8 instead, and now enjoy this final masterpiece. Knight jumps to g4, double check. King must take the bishop. Rook to h6, checkmate. Wow, what a checkmate! This was a complete masterpiece, guys. Brilliant, aggressive, and unforgettable. All right, my friends, that's all for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it and maybe learned something new. If I made any mistakes in the analysis, I apologize. Thanks for watching, and as always, stay classy, chess lovers.